Philip Harris was born in Southern California and currently lives in San Francisco. He doesn't know where home is anymore, but hopes wherever he lands they have burritos. He recently finished his first novel. His work has been published in the Los Angeles Review, the Atticus Review, and British Vogue. Please welcome.
This is from a nonfiction class I took with a beautiful car last semester. It's called The Proximity of Ghosts. I never meet David, but his profile on Scruff, the gay hookup app, tells me he's a videographer and HIV positive. He's 6 feet 1 inches tall. His profile says spontaneity, charisma, and authenticity are key, and that he's 420 friendly. He often jogs by my bay windows, his pale legs dancing in his baggy basketball shorts. On some Saturday afternoons, he passes my bay window carrying full grocery bags in his maroon sweatered arms. His hair is blonde, his nipples are big, and the V of his waist draws the eye down into his shorts. He shares his HIV status on Scruff, but not on Grindr. None of this information is any of my business, and yet it is, in that the quest for sex and love manifests interactions with data from that 21st century phenomenon of self-branding known as the dating app profile. The gay men in my neighborhood, or I should say, the mere symbols of these men, logos of the people they may or may not be, haunt my life, and every so often one of them becomes real. Steve and I meet at a Mexican restaurant in Glen Park. He's been messaging me on Growler, another dating app, but I've had no interest in him. His profile shares no information, though his photo is of him staring seductively, a solid jaw and a black peacoat anchoring his earnestness. A friend negotiates our first meeting, posing as me on the app. At dinner, Steve asks me if I've ever been in a long-term relationship. I tell him yes, but it's been years. He tells me he wants kids and doesn't believe me when I tell him I could be faithful. I then confess that my straight friend Sean was the person with whom he was chatting on Growler, and not me, that I'm not in fact a math professor at Stanford. Steve understands and still wants to eat cookies on the beach for dessert. We cuddle under the blue blanket that came with his Mercedes. He tells me evolution is Satan's attempt at putting distance between human and God. We don't kiss. One night with Sean and a few others in the Castro, I see David run up the stairs of a Victorian that's been converted into a salon. I message Colton because while I think he's adorable, he seems unattractive enough to let me sleep with him. He's 23 and half Burmese. The only other pieces of info he shares on his profile are that his favorite movie is Alien and that he knows the Led Zeppelin catalog. This is enough for me to want to marry him. A week later, he's no longer a list of random facts on an app. His iPhone is 0.0 miles from mine because so is he. Our phones resting beside one another on my desk in the dark. We watch documentaries and order pizza. When we fuck, he holds my chin. As we soak my sheets, I feel myself wanting to tell the world about our hookup. I meet Frank at the corner of 9th and Irving in the inner Sunset. He has hair growing out of his ears and is incapable of making a cohesive sentence. He eats with his mouth open, is mean to our server, and tells me the food from the Indian restaurant next door gives him diarrhea. For dessert, we walk down the street for some froyo. We sit outside, and when he finishes in 5 minutes, I'm happy to throw my vanilla chocolate swirl away in order to end the date. When he turns the corner to catch his bus, I tell the male-female couple next to me that I was just on a terrible date. We could tell, the man says. They appear in their late 50s, and they sit with me while I wait until my Uber comes, reassuring me that I'll find the right guy. Colton is 3 hours late to our second date. My therapist says I should try to engage him in conversation instead of just watching TV and having sex, to know more about him than just his favorite movie and that he knows the Led Zeppelin catalog. I don't want him to be just a hookup guy. I want to get to know him. I want him to know me. I want to tell him about my writing, about my family. I want to tell him how I moved to San Francisco for grad school and have a hard time relating to other gay men, that I spend most of my time with straight men and women because it feels safer, how with them I'll never be rejected. I want to tell him how I saw my grandmother die. I want to tell him what happened to me at the private school. I want to tell him about Tina Turner. When he arrives at my studio, he informs me he has a headache and doesn't want to talk. We watch American Horror Story in dark silence and have another night of amazing sex. He tells me he wants to spend the night the following Wednesday. I take this as a good sign, and we kiss beside his Lexus SUV when we part ways. One afternoon, I see David smoking weed in Golden Gate Park. He's reading Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. Despite my judgment over his opinion about evolution being a tool of Satan, I agreed to another date with Steve. He picks me up in the Mercedes that came with the blue blanket and commences to talk on the phone for 20 minutes all the way to Marin. He doesn't apologize when he hangs up. Instead, he insists on going to an expensive waterfront seafood restaurant for dinner, despite the fact that I told him I've already eaten. He orders a full meal of halibut, sautéed carrots and zucchini, Caesar salad, and Pinot Noir. I eat nothing but have a few bites of the fondant-choked cake he chooses for dessert. He demands I pay half. We go back to my place, and he cuddles up on me. He stops abruptly, saying that he's already gone too far physically with someone he's not interested in pursuing a serious relationship with. I plan to never see him again. Tim wants to know if I've ever role-played. On Growler, I'm only slightly attracted to him, but I tell him I've always been interested in a teacher-student scenario. He's in his 50s, happily partnered, and lives in the Castro. He tells me that I'm a boy in boarding school and that I've been missing class. He tells me that he's going to punish me on Monday afternoon. I think I'm okay with being spanked. On Monday, for an hour, I check his distance from my iPhone. He's supposed to arrive at 2. I clean my apartment. At 1:45, he's 2.4 miles away. At 1:55, he's still 2.4 miles. I wonder if he's coming. At 2:03, I check again, 0.0 miles, and my front door opens. He's older than I thought and far less attractive, but I already feel deep into this, so I go ahead with the games. There is no safe word, and when he bends me over my bed and beats me relentlessly with a hairbrush, a ruler, a leather whip, and then a long wooden paddle, I realize my hope of light BDSM is shattered. Having only ever interacted with the symbols of such sexual contact, the reality thereof catches me off guard. I feel so guilty when I demand that he stops, I offer to blow him. He accepts, pulling his giant stomach out of the way so I can find his penis. When I ejaculate after, he tells me I'm a good boy. Once dressed, he asks me, "Do you rent this studio?" I answer in the affirmative and that I only pay $1,600 a month, no utilities included. "You should stay here as long as you can," he says. "The going rate for a studio apartment in this area is now $2,200. He tells me to start coming to class, and I tell him that in real life I'm actually a great student. "That's why it's your fantasy," he says matter of factly. He tells me he's looking forward to punishing me again, but I know I will never let him. I spend the rest of the afternoon sketching his hitting implements into my notebook, trying desperately to turn the reality of what has just happened into a story. About every 3 weeks, I see that he's viewed my profile again. I spend my days thinking about Colton. He's 11 years younger than me and still lives with his parents. He's in community college. He wears high-top sneakers with green socks. He likes to wear zip-up hoodies and a Sherman cap. I try not to text him even though it's all I want to do. I replay our night of sheet-soaking sex over and over in my head, him holding my chin, him telling me I'm handsome and amazing, him hugging my forearm as we watch Netflix under the quilt my mother sewed for me. I want to ask him to be my boyfriend. I sent him photos of my niece in LA. He's the best sex I've had in years. He is smart, adorable. I think about how falling in love with him might mean I'd have a reason to stay in San Francisco after I get my degree. I think about how after the first night we were together, he left my apartment at 4 in the morning and texted me when he got home. I think about how excited I become when I see he viewed one of my Snapchat stories. I become anxious when he doesn't text back right away. To help ease my anxiety, Sean makes me put my phone on airplane mode during class so I don't keep checking it. I want to open my life to Colton, to bring him in, to introduce him to my family, take him back to LA. I want to put on Facebook and all the apps that I'm in a relationship. I want everyone to know that I nabbed a beautiful guy 11 years younger than me. I want people to be jealous of us when they see us. I want the world to know that I was able to get Colton. At the cafe up on Balboa, I get a message through Growler. It's Steve. He asks why I didn't see him again. I explain about the phone and the expensive seafood I had to pay half for. He apologizes and asks to take me out again. I agree. We go to Pachi's, is that how you say it? Pachi's Pizza?
Yes.
Our conversation pops after we pick up cookies in the Castro and go back to my place. We start cuddling again, and I end up in my underwear on my bed, him playing with various body parts, and his hands and tongue, with his hands and tongue. He is fully clothed. I go in for a kiss, and he tells me he can't. I become angry, asking him what the problem is, and he proceeds to shame me for wanting to move so fast. He heads to the door and says, "So I guess I'm never seeing you again, huh? Won't you at least walk me to my car?" On the corner outside my apartment, we argue about words like date and friends. I am now on the outside of my bay window, another ghost among the fog. An hour after he leaves, I check Growler and see that his phone is still 0.01 miles away. I assume he's sitting in his car, stewing. I text Sean that if he doesn't hear from me in the morning, I'm either dead or in jail for shanking a motherfucker. I spend the next hour haunting my own neighborhood in the middle of the night, looking for the Mercedes that came with the blue bacon, and I never find it. I see David at Moby Dick with my friends. He's talking to an older guy. I wonder if the older guy has enough spontaneity, charisma, thank you, and authenticity to close the deal. I wonder if they met on Growler or Scruff. Colton arrives a half hour early for our third date. He doesn't make eye contact and uses no tongue when he kisses me. We sit and attempt conversation. Our movie doesn't start for another hour. He tells me he has a headache and doesn't want to chat. He finally says, let's walk up to the theater. As we grab a snack before the Purple Cow, at the Purple Cow, he tells me he can't spend the night but wants to eat dinner after the movie. After we watch The Martian, he tells me he is going home. I'm pretty sure I'm never going to see him again, even though he says we'll be hanging out next week. I don't think he notices that he now refers to me in the past tense, that he's casually telling me not to text him. A week of no contact later, he texts that I've quenched a thirst he had, that he's not interested in anything serious. He doesn't think. Sean suggests deleting the entire text conversation from my iPhone. I do, but not before I've screen capped it for future reference. I see David on the 5R bus, the violent sunlight whipping his bird face. His messenger bag is slung loosely across his small chest and shoulders. He watches passengers get off and on at each stop. Steve comes over the Friday night after I last saw Colton. I tell Steve about Colton, how he referred to me in the past tense, how we saw The Martian. I do not tell him that Colton was the best sex I've ever had. Steve cuddles, but once again leaves when things become too intimate. I don't have the energy this night to fight or search for his car after he's left. The morning of the Folsom Street Fair, I get a message from a new person named Ethan. We sort of hit it off and decide to meet for breakfast. I tell him I have no plans to go to Folsom, to which he says I'm not a good enough gay person. He then informs me that he's wearing a singlet under his cargo shorts and t-shirt. I ask him back to my place so he can prove it. He does, and I fuck him. I have to cover his mouth because he yells throughout our sex, and my bay windows look directly out onto the sidewalk. After we dress, I drop him off at Market in Dolores. One night, a few months later, after flying in from Seattle, Steve asks to come over again. I say yes, and despite everything that's happened over the last 4 dates, I know we are going to have sex, and we finally do. Tim never messages me again, but Bear Buddy, his partner, through Growler, asks if I want to come over and get tied up. I decline. I'm sitting in a van in the Castro. My legs are touching those of a beautiful man with braces and a tight sweater who happens to be drawing a prick of blood from my middle finger for an HIV test. Through the open side door, I look out and see Sean and 2 of my other straight friends awaiting for me. They are smiling and laughing with each other. I have told them about my family, shared photos with them, told them about what happened to me at the private school. They know I saw my grandmother die, and I've told them over and over again about Tina Turner. It is they who I've let into my life, and it feels wonderful even though at that moment my finger is bleeding. As I watch them, the people I actually love, the people I'm in an actual relationship with, David saunters by, the ghost who has no clue who I know who he is, or that I'm about to find out that we have very different HIV statuses. I mourn for Colton for a few weeks, mostly to myself in silence. I follow him on Snapchat and see that he goes to Taipei over the winter break. He's still painfully adorable, and in a moment of weakness, I message him through Snapchat to tell him how much I'm enjoying his stories. He responds immediately, despite being on the other side of the planet, and thanks me, hoping I'm doing well. The message disappears when I close the app. Steve asks me out to dinner on Valentine's Day, and I decline. Anderson and I meet on the corner of 9th and Irving, where I had an awful date with Frank almost a year earlier. We go to Pachi's for pizza. Anderson is my age. He has his own apartment. He's beautiful. We have 2 friends in common. He makes inappropriate jokes that catch me off guard at first, but then make me almost spit up my water. He invites me over for post-dinner tea. We talk for a few hours and then have quick hookup sex. I'm prepared to shower and leave, but he cuddles up next to me and says he wants to talk more. We chat for 10 minutes, and to my surprise, we have sex again, but this time it's quiet. This isn't hurry up and get off sex. We stare in each other's eyes. I hold the back of his neck when we kiss. None of the other men are in my mind. I'm here with Anderson, and he's here with me, and I can feel we're connecting as adults, as humans, not profiles on a dating app. He tells me I can spend the night, and I do. As I fall asleep, he comments on how empathetic I am, asking me to tell him another funny story as he drifts away, my arms firmly around him. The next morning, after taking Uber back to my place, I am shaking and don't know why. I'm even a little weak. Sean comes over and we walk down to the park as we sometimes do. I tell him about my night, how it felt good to be with someone my age, in my peer group, to be with a man who liked who I was, who wasn't quenching a thirst or role-playing or testing the limits of his own spirituality. I realize, sitting beside my straight friend in the afternoon sun, that the apps and Facebook aren't a reason to want a relationship. I realize I don't care about putting in a relationship on my Facebook page or app profiles. I don't care if people are jealous of me. I don't care about people knowing I can nab anyone. I realize I want a boyfriend so I can hold him as we fall asleep. I want a human being to deeply care for me beyond the random bits of data we know of each other from dating app profiles. I carry the secrets and the public data I know about the men in San Francisco within me wherever I go, having wondered what it would be like to be with them, and now I know because I've just spent the night with a human being, not a profile photo. I never see Anderson again. Later that afternoon, Sean and I are walking back to my apartment. I'm still thinking about Anderson, how I felt transformed, and I see David, the ghost I've never met, walking towards us on 36th Avenue. He's looking at his phone, his pale legs still dancing in his basketball shorts. He's still blonde, still 6 feet 1 inches tall. I imagine his nipples are still big. See this guy coming towards us? I whisper to Sean. Yeah, he says. He's HIV positive, I say. Why do you know that? He asks. I shouldn't, but I do. But if we hook up, then I probably should. I turn back and see David disappear into the park. Thank you.